But thou, O Daniel, seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Zola Levitt presents Signs of the End.
Shalom. Hello again. Well, here's another of our Signs of the End programs, but our sign tonight is not a battle or a disaster or some cataclysmic sign, but rather it answers to the prophecy in Daniel 12:4, many will rove about to and fro, and knowledge will be increased. This word for increase is in Hebrew rabbah, multiplied, greatly increased. Some of us know the expression todah, thanks in Hebrew. Todah rabbah means thanks so much, thanks very much. Knowledge will increase very much in that sense. And, well, I often think that'll be spiritual knowledge. I trust that computer knowledge will increase and scientific knowledge will increase and always has. But the peculiar sign that shows the day of the Lord coming on would be a biblical kind of a sign, and we really have one to talk about tonight. On the New York Times front page recently, and in many other newspapers, there was an article about, well, it says, from Israeli site, news of House of David, and for the first time I've ever seen in the New York Times, Aramaic writing, which I can make out. It looks something like modern Hebrew. Beit David, the House of David, Beit David. And as with the Dead Sea Scrolls, the New York Times was there, gave it its due, a two-page article, a picture of the archaeologist Dr. Avraham Biran, and the place, Tel Dan, way up next to the Golan Heights in the northern part of Israel. And we were very interested in that, sent our own expert, Dr. Tom McCall, and were lucky enough to get the first pictures of this new stone. No one has seen this outside the encampment there at the dig, except Tom and you. Tom, how was it out there?
Well, Zola, meeting Dr. Biran was quite an experience. He is an archaeologist for all of his life, all of his adult life, and he's 84 years old. He retired from being head of the Israel Antiquities Department at age 65. And for the last 19 years, he's been working on the Tel Dan in far north Israel, doing the excavations there. Yeah. But at age 84, he gets the discovery of his life. He discovers and finds the House of David stone.
So you had you'd done your homework, I remember you saying.
Yes.
It took some reading up in the Bible to know what the significance of this.
That's right, and of course he bases the time when the stone was made and inscribed around 850 BC, 850 years before Christ, almost 3,000 years ago, long time. But he gave us a scoop. He said we could take not only pictures of the stone, but do a video interview with him and go through the whole museum that he has there and see the whole significance of the stone of the House of David.
Well, obviously, the expression House of David is peculiarly biblical. To have it written on an ancient stone like this, I understand almost 3,000 years old, corroborates a piece of the Bible, which is very important.
It's the first time that we've found anything in archaeology that is reflective of the dynasty of David from contemporary sources. And that's the remarkable thing about this discovery, Zola.
Stand by for news from the past.
Dr. Biran was nice enough to show me many of the beautifully restored artifacts on display at the Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. This is home for Dr. Biran, amidst glimpses of life that date back as far as the 18th century before Christ. Dr. Biran, can you tell us about what is in this photo here?
We were following the mud brick construction here, and there was debate, I mean, is it a tower or is it a base for something? And then there appeared the beginning of an arch. And I remember we asked our draftsman to draw it. You know, when you have an excavation, you draw everything you find. And he said, that's boring, there's nothing exciting. I said, no, you know, proper archaeological work, you got to draw this thing. And then suddenly he yelled and he says, I have an arch.
Were you surprised to find an arch?
I said, arches were supposed to have been invented by the Romans. And here we have a building from around 1800 BCE. How could it be? Anyway, we cleaned it, and sure enough, it's a complete arch belonging to a gate built around the middle of the 19th century BC. What's remarkable about it is A, that you found an arch, but most of that it's standing the way it was built, including the mud brick construction on top of the arch. And that is probably the original height of the gate with the steps leading to it. What was puzzling was why do you have sort of what looks like a retaining wall on the side? And then when we noticed that the arch and the gate was actually blocked full of earth, this was deliberate. So we came to the conclusion that probably they found a fault in the construction. And they started by building retaining walls. And that wasn't good enough. So they blocked it and covered it.
You told us the date of this excavation. Can you tell us about its location? What are we looking at?
We are at a site called Tel Dan, which is identified with the place where King Jeroboam set the golden calf, and which is mentioned incidentally already in the book of Genesis. I have a personal relationship to this gate. You know, Abraham, according to Genesis 14, pursued the kings who took his nephew Lot prisoner. Yes. And the Bible says he came as far as Dan. Now we know that in those days, the name of the city was Laish. We know that from the book of Judges. So, but I imagine that Abraham, who won a battle, I cannot imagine the king of the city not going out and say to him, will you come in, please? And I, whose name happens to be Abraham, every time I walk up the steps, I feel like Abraham of old, walking into the gate of the city of Laish.
Can you tell us about the photo on the other end?
Look, the trouble is that there are so many exciting things about Tel Dan.
Please.
Now, this was the exciting things for about 10 years. Then we found out we were excavating in another part of the mound, on the southern side. We were excavating a construction which belongs to the Israelite period, to the 9th century BC, which we think was a city gate and city wall built by King Ahab, who was famous for his wife Jezebel. And in front of the gate was a large piazza. It was a very interesting problem there because we have an outer gate and we have a major gate, and why should there be a piazza in front? It didn't make any sense. Years later, in fact, just this past month of July, we excavated this whole area and found at the southern end of this piazza a new gate, unknown, unexpected. And not far from that gate, at the end of a wall which was bordering this piazza, was a basalt stone with clearly cut ancient letters in the Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, Moabite that we know from the 9th century BC.
And this is where you found the stone which has become so famous?
It became famous because it has the words Beit David, House of David in it.
Could you tell us about that stone as we go to see it?
Hi, my name is Ann Snell and I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. I've been a student of Zola Levitt Ministries for about 10 years now, and I've been to Israel twice with this ministry. Understanding about the Jewish roots of my faith and experiencing Israel firsthand have been among the greatest blessings of my entire life. I want to encourage those of you who watch this ministry weekly to support it with your prayers and with your financial giving. I believe that the message that this ministry shares, particularly in regard to Israel, is reflective of God's heart and is a message that all people need to hear. And so I believe it's up to us to help get that message out.
When we discovered the city gate of the Israelite period, we decided to build a model, because what we found in the actual excavation was what you see in the black part. This is a model with the towers, and this is where the outer gate is. And in front of the outer gate, we saw the beginning of this piazza. Now this piazza has now been completely excavated, and at the very end, at the southern edge here, is where we found the new gate and the wall which ran along this line here. And at the very end of that wall, as part of it, was this basalt stone, which seems like nothing at all like any other basalt stone.
And this is the famous stone with the inscriptions on
And it has the letters and the words are so clear. You see, the words are separated by dots. Now, the exciting thing is when you find suddenly an expression which you know very well from the Bible, like Melech Yisrael, the king of Israel. The word Melech, king, Yisrael of Israel, king of Israel, written in ancient Aramaic script. And below that, another line. And you have the last letter of the word king, of the word Melech, similar to the one before. The last letter of the word king, Chaf, Melech, and then next to it is Bet, Yutaf, Beit, house, Dalet, David, house of David, without a dot between. Now that's important, because then the expression Beit David, house of David, was apparently a known expression.
All one word.
I mean, the people in those days, I mean, it doesn't matter what we know. I mean, but for the man who set up this inscription, this victory stealer, refers to the house of David, Beit David. When you have a story clearly written in the book of Kings, first book of Kings in chapter 15, and you should read it. It's a very beautifully depicted incident where there is a statement there of King Baasha attacking King Asa of Judah, of Jerusalem, and winning apparently.
He was the king of the house of David.
Asa.
Yes.
Asa. The term house of David is the expression used in antiquity to denote the kingdom of Judah.
Dr. Biran suggests that we study 1 Kings 15 for the background here, and why don't you oblige?
So Ben-Hadad hearkened unto King Asa, and sent the captains of the hosts which he had against the cities of Israel, and smote Ijon, and Dan, and Abel Beth Maachah, and all Kinnereth, with all the lands of Naphtali.
So this is another Golan Heights area conflagration.
It really was Syria against Israel, and he captured the northern cities of Dan and those around there, and all around the Sea of Galilee. But why did Ben-Hadad do that? Well, it goes back to the original story here, when there was a king of Judah, Asa, a king of Israel, the northern kingdom, Baasha, and the king of Syria, Ben-Hadad. Well, King Asa was a godly king, and he was also a hero. He had an army of about 500,000 men, but he was being invaded by the Ethiopians, and they had an army, can you imagine it, of 1 million soldiers coming up against Jerusalem. And he, with his 2-to-1 army, went out there and was victorious. Asa conquered the Ethiopian invader.
Similar to Middle Eastern wars today. Israel outnumbered, but still with the God of Israel,
Was able
wins the
to
battle.
be victorious. Now, this created a kind of jealousy between Israel and Judah, because so many people thought that King Asa in Judah was a hero, that the people from Israel, the northern kingdom, were coming down and worshiping in Jerusalem, coming to the feasts, recognizing King Asa as the king. And King Baasha didn't like that, so he tried to create a wall at a place called Ramah so that the people from Israel couldn't get down to Judah. It blocked them off. Well, King Asa didn't like that, so he sent money to King Ben-Hadad up in Syria and said, get Israel off my back.
That is the northern kingdom.
The northern kingdom. And so King Ben-Hadad obliged, and he attacked the north of Israel and captured Dan. And that's the background of this stone. Because Dr. Buran believes that Ben-Hadad wrote this stone as a monument to his conquering of the northern part of the land of Israel, including Dan, and set this up in the town of Dan as a memorial of his victory over the northern part of Israel.
You go back to the book of Kings, to verse 20, and there he says that they attacked cities in Galilee, Ayon, Dan, and Abel Beit Macha. In fact, all the land of Naphtali, it says. So, and this is found at Dan. So it's a victory stele connected with the conquest of Dan. Had we excavated Iyon and Abel Beit Macha, who knows, maybe we would have found another inscription. That's an idea. Maybe we should really go and do some excavations there and find the other inscriptions, the other victory stele. So
the theory you are developing is that this stone was erected during the time of King Ben-Hadad.
There are two clear things. A, the date on epigraphic grounds of the inscription is the 9th century. So historically, we are all right. The name of the god Hadad is mentioned in the inscription. So again, that is confirmed. Personally, I have a story in the book of Kings. I have an inscription, a stela, which can apply to it. So until I am proved wrong by the fact that another name will appear, I'll stick by that one.
So the stone has been waiting there under the ground for 2,800 years for you to discover it.
And then, you see, I have to issue a warning. People like to think great archaeologists, famous scholars, they go and they find things. Don't believe them. You have to have luck and you have to accident. Do you know how this one was found? Our surveyor, Gila Cook, was standing trying to measure the walls and the like, and she says to me, come over here. And I walk over here, I don't know what she wanted. She says, look down. And I look down. And it so happened that the sun rays were in the proper direction. And you could then see the clear letters. And I remember saying, oh my God, what did we find? Then we looked. And then it was not deep in the ground. It was just a couple of inches, because we again could pull it up from the ground, turn it properly against the sun, and then can read the letters and the words correctly.
What is the impact of this discovery on the scholarly world?
Well, in the first place, that it was found. There aren't many inscriptions. You don't find them. Even people wrote in antiquity. Now they wrote on parchment because of the humidity, it got deteriorated. You have on stones, but in the entire Middle East, there's a handful. There is the famous Mesha inscription from Mertabah in Moab. There is some up in northern Syria. So first of all, that you found, so there's hope. The second importance is that you have a relatively long text. And the epigraphers can then spend a lot of time studying. And the third point, as you know, there are all scholars who have theories that most of the historical events mentioned in the Bible are possibly late inventions, were not so. And since the house of David, for example, the name, the expression, and the name David, for that matter, was never found outside the Bible, people used to say, well, you know, people invented a legend. So now you have evidence on stone, engraved on stone, of the expression Beit David, house of David. And I think that ends up with all the discussions of the existence of and that means, Beit David means the dynasty of David. So, and this is written according to archaeological, leave the Bible, on epigraphic grounds, in the 9th century, say about 100 years, 150 years after David's existence. So it must have been, though David was a historical figure. Let me say something else. Archaeology is not brought in the words of my famous teacher, Albright of Johns Hopkins University, is not to prove or disprove the Bible. Albright used to say that the Bible, as a book of divine inspiration, needs no proof.
This stone demonstrates the historicity of King David and his dynasty.
Definitely. I didn't need that to prove it. But for a non-believer or the doubting Thomases, is that what you call the guy who doesn't believe anything? For all the doubting Thomases, here you have the evidence. But it's only for people like that. I mean, for me, I don't need it.
Well, he said the stone is proof, and I think it is. When you find an artifact in the ground that you can carbon date, what it says is definitive, important.
Right, Zola, and here we have a picture of that very stone that Dr. Buran was showing us. And the two main lines that are so important is this one, which says Melech Yisrael.
Going across there.
Yes, and that means the King of Israel.
Yes.
And then you have the word House of David, and before that, the last letter of King. So we believe we have the King of Israel and the King of the House of David on these two lines.
Oh yeah, Melech Beit David.
Melech Beit David. And that's a remarkable thing because it's the first time that any such archaeological discovery has been made that shows a contemporary source naming the House of David. The theory that has been taught in so many schools, so many seminaries, especially among the liberal seminaries, is that there never was such a person as David.
A legendary hero.
He was a myth.
Yeah.
Their theory is that the personality of David was invented by the people who came back from the Babylonian captivity.
Oh, 300 years later.
And they decided, well, we need some heroes. And so they invented Moses, and they invented David, and they invented the Davidic dynasty and all of the great stories in the Bible up to that point.
Yes.
And they could always say, well, there's never been any archaeological evidence to prove that there ever was a David. How do we know that such a person ever existed? And they could get away with that until this was discovered this summer, when Dr. Buran uncovered this stone in the Tel Dan.
Well, you know, do they now say at the liberal seminary, we were wrong, the Bible's truer than we thought?
It's certainly given them pause to think that maybe there was a King David, and perhaps there is more to the stories of the Bible and that they are true history than we had thought. But this is an amazing thing that we have stumbled upon this, and like Dr. Buran says, they want to go out and search for more. They'd like to find more of this stone.
And probably will if Daniel is right. Knowledge will increase, and this is the sort of thing, you know, it draws a line. Do you believe in Scripture? Do you not? When the Lord comes for the church, are you those who have read it and believed it, or are you those who have said, oh, he's not really coming, he's coming back in our hearts or something, or the world is getting better every day? these doctrines that had been taught that really were unbiblical would fall apart under evidence like this every time.
And they're finding more things like this all the time. But this one is so important because it establishes the house of David. And of course, that's so important to us as believers in the Messiah, because Jesus Christ claims to be a descendant of the house of David.
Of course.
And his claim to the Messiahship is based, at least from the human side, on his being a descendant of the house of David. So here is evidence again that there really was a house of David at that time. And that's the real story of the stone of the house of David.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, the New Testament begins with the statement, HaSefer Yeshua HaMashiach ben David, the book of Jesus Christ, the son of David. And that the house of David exists and we have archaeological evidence for it is extremely important. Well, and I understand you'll be back with more evidence on next week's program. There's more sites. Boy, folks at home, tell your friends to tune in. This really is exciting. I mean, it's one thing to go and cover the peace process on, and we do that too. But gosh, this is one of a kind. The New York Times, which has a lot to write about, put it on page 1, and I don't wonder. And they're not a religious newspaper. Our offer tonight is about the signs of the end in keeping with our subject. We've prepared a new book, Dr. McCall and I, Signs of the End, the 90s. This is an updated teaching of Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, in which the Lord was asked the questions, what are the signs of the end of the age and of your coming? And he answered in very clear terms. We discuss those, and then we add another part to the book to update it for the 90s, the peace process and all that we're seeing around us today to help you understand that. That is our offer tonight. We're putting in 4 collar pins with it, and these are fun. And listen, it's good these days to wear a Star of David. It's good to wear a pin that says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. I say that at the end of every one of our programs. The two together, the book and the collar pins, $10, please, at our post office box. And folks, you know, you can order that with the credit card at the 800 number or mail it in. That's fine, but remember, the fund's year's end is coming. And, you know, here's an example. We were ready when Dr. Baran found this. We had a crew in Israel. We jumped in the van, and we were there in a minute. We covered it for you. CNN didn't get this story. You know what? Ted Koppel missed this story. The New York Times got it, but they didn't get pictures for you. So we were there because you supported us. Support us again. And Sha'alu, Shalom Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.